if you have a chance and are interested, this is a very interesting research thing that happened. So if you want to go look it up, it totally should. But Tulving and Gold in 1963 did a study on the brain of children who are learning how to read. And if something was missing at the end, if they had a word and they took it out, but the word was obvious that it should be in there, the child would automatically read it as if it was already there. So if you look at this right here, the time to read in milliseconds, so this is less than 80 milliseconds, less than 70 milliseconds. So saying something less than 70 milliseconds is pretty darn fast. And the green line is going to be the words that fit in the sentence, the appropriate ones, and the red ones were going to be the inappropriate words, things that didn't really make any sense. So like the instance we said, if we're at a party and we all yell happy birthday is the one that would come to mind. So that would be the appropriate approach. And to see that, the student wouldn't have to think about what came next. It would just automatically come next. And so they could see those words and say them quicker than if it was a word they didn't know. So for instance, if we're walking into somewhere and somebody yells happy and the word is Monday, that doesn't really make sense in our background knowledge and what we know about language and what we know about yelling happy something to somebody. So that's going to be where the inappropriate word is. So it takes our brain, the students' brains too, a little longer to process the words that don't make sense in the contextual part of that sentence. Very interesting. So when you think about like how fast do you know a word, it's if it makes sense in the context. So if you are reading text-heavy work right now, while you're in college, you probably can't read it nearly as quickly as if you're going to read something for fun. So if you're reading like a comic book or a romance novel or your latest murder mystery, those things are going to come quickly because they're in narrative form and you kind of understand what's going to be happening next. If you are reading contextual, like very heavy content work, like some of the things that we're asking you to read in this class as far as your readings, it's probably going to take you a lot longer. It's a little bit slower because those ones are not going to be as automatic as the ones that you already know. So when we hear the word automatic in reading, we use the word automaticity, and that means that we're going to say the words right when we hear them, like come up quickly, quickly, quickly. And what does that have to do with anything? It builds meaning and comprehension. Okay, so the whole idea of the bottom up versus top down, which one's better? You need them both. You absolutely need them both. So the main issue as teachers then are how do we combine the two processes effectively? Because all these students needed both tool sets in their toolboxes to figure out which one they're going to use. Are they going to put meaning first or sound out every word? Think about your reading right now. When you read something out loud and you come to a word you don't know, how do you figure it out? Do you skip over it? Do you kind of guess what it might mean? How many of you actually sound out the word? Maybe? I'm not sure. When I come to a word I don't know, sometimes I chunk it. If I know the first part of it, I know the middle part of it, maybe you can figure out the last part of it, and then I figure out, well, I know what word is within the word and kind of break it apart. And then you look at context clues around, like, well, what could make sense in this? And so those kind of strategies we use as good readers, those are the ones that we're going to have to teach students to use. So, which one's better? You need them both. So a little earlier in this presentation, I talked about sentence integration kind of quickly. And do you even know what that means? Sentence integration is the combination of decoding and meaning, making a fluent reader, which means automaticity. So if you can take a student who is struggling reading and show them how to break down words and build meaning at the same time, and the repetition of practice, we get to the point where we're automatic. We can read fluently and quickly, and the quicker we read, the faster we are understanding those concepts, our comprehension is going to build because we're taking that brain power away from figuring out what the words are, and we can concentrate on figuring out the meaning. So if a student has to sound out in chunk every single word in the sentence, by the time they get to the end of the sentence, it's been maybe 30 seconds to a minute since they started, and the meaning of the sentence is gone. So if we can get a student to read that sentence within like 4 or 5 seconds, that meaning is still going to be there. It's automaticity. So if we take a look at this slide, the sentence integration is actually, like I said, combining and decoding the meaning to make fluent readers. Automaticity. And if you look at the 3 boxes or the 3 Venn diagram circles up there, we've got the 3 things that kind of have to all come together to make good readers. So you need a little bit of everything. You need some background knowledge, and you need to know knowledge of language patterns and letter sounds and relationships and how information works in print, and you take those all together and they work as a team and becomes automatic. So when you think about you reading, how did you get to the point where you are? Do you remember having those building blocks built, or were they already just there? Did you have that memory of sitting on mom's lap or dad's lap or grandma's lap reading book after book after book? Were you one that was struggling a little bit in reading at the beginning of your education? Did you have to go back and check out those building blocks again? So if we think about how we got to where we are and then work backwards at how we want other students to get to that point where we are now, it's a lot of work, but it's definitely worthwhile. Worthwhile, yes, and so important. So that is why a lot of our instruction as pre-K through, second, third grade is mainly based on language backgrounds. So take a look at this quote. If learning to read was as easy as learning to talk, many more children would learn to read on their own. The fact that they do not, despite being surrounded by print, suggests that learning to read is not as spontaneous or a simple skill. It's hard. Learning to read is hard. And if you were one of those students that did struggle with reading, you probably understand how hard this can be sometimes.